Intent Unknown is the latest psychological thriller, but does it offer enough to put you on the edge of your seat? Welcome to Cinema, where we focus on the film. I'm Josh, this is Simply Cinema, and today we're talking about Intent Unknown, the latest independent psychological thriller. Let me know in the comments below if you've seen it, what you think of it, or if you're unknown about this film in general. I have a link down below to the streamer where you can rent it, and it just so happens this movie was filmed on locations near me, and the director was kind enough to send over a streamer for me to review for you guys, but all views expressed in this video are my own. We're college students are put in a group together to devise a new psychological experiment for an assignment. Their ambition leads them to get a stranger in their house that ultimately alters what their fates are in their lives. Starting off with the positives, the production value is incredible on its own. Just the cinematography throughout, the camera placement, the movements, all feel natural and incredible. The way that you soak into the environment that it sets out from the very beginning to the end, and just the natural environment naturally feels tense in the way they establish the music, which the soundtrack is incredible and better than I kind of expected. I expected less out of how much soundtrack we're getting, but the tension is really built upon a lot of the music alone, which adds a lot to the emotion and the value of what you can get from the emotions you get out of this film. And the acting was quite good, especially for many of them being debuts. Lucy Deacon, Brianna Parker, Cameron Mustin, and Alyssa Jackson just all have great characters. The way they're established from the get-go, there's a little bit of a narrative dialogue that's introduced with Lucy Deacon being the main character, or acting as the main character as Harper, and what she does brings something that's really good. It feels like there's suppressed emotions within her character that really shines through just through certain moments where something dramatic happens and you're not necessarily getting as much emotions that are spilling out of her, not in the sense that it's wrong in her acting, but just with her character alone is built up in a way that's quite interesting and not what I expected for what they're going through. The psychological experiments, I'm a big psychology fan, so already off the bat, this really hooks me into what this story has to offer. There's a couple questions that I had near the beginning that become irrelevant near the end, just with the way things are set up, and they're not necessarily a flaw for what the teacher is asking of them and how he is suppressing the certain grade trauma into the idea of what the film idea has to offer. And so I can easily dismiss what that is because of the way they naturally set it up to be something that makes sense to the story. The other characters they establish along the way as well, just in the very beginning, and you learn a little bit more about them and how they react to different situations as they go on. And it feels very natural with the environment they establish being very small town-esque and creating this college setting that has just these four characters on the focus, and then establishing more characters as you go along. The threat, that eminence that you see in the sort of prologue at the beginning, and just the way they progress this film is very natural. And of course, the music still soaks into the natural environment that builds this up to be something that's something greater than I expected for what the independent film implies at times, where the budget may be lower, but the natural simplicity of the environment, how they integrate these characters, even for debuts, for most of them, really stands out. And I also gotta applaud Terrence Gordon for being the director, and him and Beth Deacon being the co-writers just for this film really establishes good grounds for what this film is asking for the environment, setting up something that could be a trilogy for what I've heard suggested, and even Eric Roberts and Ricky Bartlett have great performances, well, just being adults in there. Ricky Bartlett being the stranger in this situation that creates a great dynamic. You really see the psycho within him and just the natural setup that you sort of get a suggestion of his backstory that does make sense for the human motivation and how you're getting that character that is also believable to be real life based on other situations you may have heard in the past. And Eric Roberts playing this dad of this other girl based on a character I'm not going to spoil too much about, but he is a spotlight that I do want to, of course, recognizing him for the first time in this film, but just what they have to offer, it really stands out with their performances as a whole. Going into some of the mixed aspects, which may or may not bother some people or will work for others, there's some sound quality issues just within very minor parts that aren't a huge deal with how it works out, but just having the ear for it. Personally, there's just certain aspects where they're in a wider room where that makes it even more difficult for the sound quality to be always perfect, and so there's slight echo just within some aspects of the film that I can easily forgive for what it's going for, but addressing it still as a film for the quality as a whole, there is those moments. And there's maybe one or two short scenes where some of the actors aren't always on their top of the game, just with how dramatic certain scenes become to where their character doesn't always react in the same way I expect them to based on how they're established. Of course, I expected with Harper to show her suppressed emotions in most scenes, but a couple of the other characters don't really feel like they're fully expressing their full motive, of course, with how they were kind of set up in the get-go. And looking at the negatives, there's some parts where the music, as much as I love it, seems to go out of proportion with how much they use certain soundtracks, where they use too much in certain scenes where it doesn't transition as accurately as it should be flowing, and there's some scenes where it should be left alone or the sound volume is a little bit too close to the level of the character speaking. I never had a problem hearing what they're saying or any of that, but it's still too close in the level compared to the tension that should be emoting from what you're getting on screen. And certain sounds are manipulated in a way that carry too much weight on what we're receiving as the audience, where it feels a little fake in the way it's trying to make you feel emotions compared to natural music that flows with the story, that makes sense to the certain tension when there's a suggestion of something wrong going on or high intense scenes that are going on. And so there's so minor nitpicks along the way with certain uses of the music, certain parts where there's a scene where lyrics are included with the music that throw in a little bit too much to what I'm expecting for the quality of what goes across the board as a whole. But overall, this is a generally good film that I adore for its atmosphere, its cinematography, and just the overall vibe that you're getting from the music and the characters as a whole. I can really dig into each of their dissections, their motivations, and everything that goes on with making this a great psychological thriller, giving it a simply 8 out of 10 as my score. So that's just my personal thoughts, and let me know your thoughts down in comments below. Do you love it? Are you on the side that doesn't particularly connect with it? Or do you find it somewhere in the middle? You can find a link to rent it down in the description below if this review helps you decide if you're going to watch it or not. And just make sure to like this video, subscribe if you haven't already. If you enjoyed this video, that's just all. Thank you for watching. Bye for now.